I was challenged the White House and my colleague to name me the town. Let's not just say the word. Name me the town, Harris. Name me the head of the department that is implementing a pattern and practice of racial discrimination against people of color. I want to be very clear. White House, Al Sharpton, Ben Crump, no systemic racism exists, and I challenge my colleague to give me the name of the town, the name of the police department, and the head of the department right now on national TV.
Systemic racism, systematic racism. That is the thing that's in vogue when you look at what the media talks about, when you look at what academia talks about and the left talks about. They kind of go in spurts, and you can see where the narrative changes. When the narrative changes, the language changes. And we see the word equity a whole lot and recently, and we see systemic racism a lot. And we've seen that a whole lot recently. And the reason systemic racism is useful for the left is you don't have to be trying to be racist for systemic racism to come into play. Systemic racism is a magical thing where racism simply appears anytime there is a statistical discrepancy between groups when you look at the groups by color or by race. So, on Fox News yesterday, Leo Terrell, who's a famous, very, very well-known civil rights attorney. He has actually specialized in police abuse cases over the years. This guy is not a super conservative,
not at all.
Ultra right-wing, anything. This guy is reasoned, and he has been plugged in with the civil rights movement for a long time. He was, Harris Faulkner was interviewing him as well as Geraldo Rivera. They were talking about systemic racism and police brutality. We've got 2 or 3 clips from this. I want to run the first one, and it is Terrell talking a little bit about his, sort of his take on the police and systemic racism. Let's run clip 1, please.
Make my comments based on 30 years of being a civil rights attorney and suing law enforcement. I want to put this to bed right now. There is no systemic racism within law enforcement in this country, especially in democratic cities where people of color are running the cities.
No systemic racism. He says this having been a guy who has specifically sued law enforcement over and over again. He says no systemic racism at all. And then he brings in the clincher in Democrat-run cities. Next clip.
I was challenged the White House and my colleague to name me the town. Let's not just say the word. Name me the town, Harris. Name me the head of the department that is implementing a pattern and practice of racial discrimination against people of color. I want to be very clear. White House, Al Sharpton, Ben Crump, no systemic racism exists, and I challenge my colleague to give me the name of the town, the name of the police department, and the head of the department right now on national TV.
So he really put it to Biden. He put it to the White House. Was not able to get an answer from them. He put it to Geraldo. We'll look at Geraldo's response here in just a second. But Andrew, what do you think of this idea? It's one thing to say that okay, there is some residual racism. It is another to say that, man, there is just no systemic racism. Do you think Leo's right?
No, absolutely. I think that there's no question about this idea of residual racism, this idea that there are still folks, I mean, plenty of people we hear, reported frequently on Burgess Owens, someone who lived through, in his early years, Jim Crow. There are people who are in a population, in our population, who are old enough to remember actual structural and systemic racism. That's kind of the danger here, actually, is that this concept, these vague terms and definitions are very useful politically. The problem with them is that they don't stand up to the historical test. And when you have a historical test being put on in real time with people who were there, folks like Terrell, these people aren't willing to say that things haven't gotten better. And that really is the Democratic claim, is that things in the United States have gotten no better over the last 5, 6, 7 decades, and that's simply not true.